resistance. If you're listening to my voice, if you're watching me right now, if you're reading our websites, you are the resistance. You are the solution. Look in the mirror. It's up to you. Come together. We need each other.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, folks. This is Alex Jones asking you for a minute of your time to tell you about soap. Not detergents, but good old-fashioned pure soap made by the Cal Ben Soap Company, a family-owned and operated American company. My family, staff, friends, and radio listeners are constantly telling me how much they love these products for bath, hair, laundry, and dishes. There is nothing like these factory-direct, big money-saving, triple-concentrated soaps anywhere. Get a free detailed catalog by calling 800-340-7091 or see them online at 5starsoap.com or Infowars.com. Let's talk to the owner of 5 Star Soap, Marty Schachter, and see what he has to say.
As founder and owner for over 63 years, people keep asking me, how's business? I'm happy to say our business is going down the drain. Call us at 1-800-340-7091. Visit our website, 5starsoap.com, for buying our 1 to 2 month soap sampler. Thank you.
A very wealthy U.S. citizen is predicting that in 2011, we will witness the most important day in America in more than 50 years. He says it will change everything about our lives. The way you shop, travel, invest, educate your children, and even how you take care of your health and your own family. Now, this man has made some outrageous predictions over the years. The crazy part is, he's usually right. You see, he predicted the collapse of GM, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and America's biggest mall owner, General Growth Properties. In fact, Barron's called his work a dire prophecy. Recently, he created a video, which you can watch online for free, detailing his biggest and most important prediction yet. And it's a real eye-opener. I can't stress this enough. You should at least watch this free video online today. He explains everything you need to know, including simple steps you can take to protect yourself. You can find the video at www.endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica, the number 3.com. Watch the free video at www.endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica3.com.
Alex told you the government announced recently that the recession is over. It ended on June of 2009. The millions of Americans unable to find work might not agree. Perhaps the recession ended for the bankers and government employees, but for the rest of us, things seem to be getting worse. Gold and silver haven't heard the news either. They've begun their long-expected journey to the moon. In addition to converting your shrinking dollars into gold and silver, you should consider a food savings account from eFoods Direct. They both make fabulous investments. Food is our greatest dependency, and we know it will be more precious than any financial resource. You and your family need food to survive a crisis, and you can't eat paper, stocks, or metals. Alex has been urging you to invest in delicious, easy-fix meals to enjoy now or save for long-term. This will freeze the cost of your food while you can still afford it. Visit efoodsdirect.com on the internet or call 800-409-5633. That's efoodsdirect.com or 800-409-5633.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down.
Okay, until the end of the hour, Congressman Ron Paul joins us, and there is so much to talk about with the congressman. Of course, his son, Rand Paul, now the junior senator from Kentucky. And we're very excited to have him here with us today from his Lake Jackson office. Congressman, Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. Same to you.
There's so much to talk about here. Out of the gates, you're now the chairman of that banking subcommittee dealing with the Federal Reserve, and it couldn't be a more perfect time as the New York Times announces the federal government is preparing to basically take the states in under receivership and their bankruptcy, and as the Chinese openly say that it's time for the dollar to not be the world reserve currency. Can you speak to your concerns? A few years ago, you said something big is about to happen. Are we now on the cusp of that?
We certainly are, and it's going to get a lot worse. Even though we had this major crisis starting in 07, 08, I thought that was just the beginning, because the real crisis comes with the dollar. When people lose confidence in the dollar doesn't deserve confidence that it has. But you can put confidence in something that isn't real, if you're deceived, and people are deceived that we are very wealthy and we have a great military, and therefore we can trust the United States because of our past performances. But eventually that is eroded, and people will reject it, and I think that we're witnessing that with the Chinese. The Chinese have, sadly, I guess, in a way, they have become more capitalistic than ours. I don't care about them becoming more capitalistic, but I don't like the idea that we become more militaristic and more socialistic. That's what's so bad. But they have their problems in China, but just think of what they've done. They produce and they save money. They take the money and they buy up resources around the world. They buy gold. They're a wealthy country. They loan us all this money. They're in the driver's seat. Don't you think that if you or I or any American was involved in that, we wouldn't be wanting to just be taking paper money that they know is going to depreciate? There would be a limit, and I think we're at that point. And when that happens, that will be a major event when the world rejects the dollar. So when it comes and how quickly it comes, those are still unknowns, but it will come, and I think we're starting to see it happen right now.
Absolutely. Congressman, as a doctor, as a congressperson, as someone who's been on the banking committees for many years and studied Austrian economics, for those that don't know, comparing our situation to the Weimar Republic, I see a lot of similarities, and we're already seeing inflation in commodities and inflation in food. What is the basic time frame that you see currently? And for those that don't know, what does dollar devaluation and the dollar losing world reserve currency status mean for people?
Well, it means higher prices and eventually higher interest rates, which means higher prices again. The government always reports statistics that are deceiving, and they tell us that inflation is like 1.5%, 2%, and yet if you talk to the average person, they know that prices are going up. And you're right about the commodities. There was a report yesterday, I think it was the S&P Commodity Index for last year, a whole group of commodities, it was up at 24%. That's huge, and you can't have that and not have that translate into day-to-day living. And people know this. The energy prices are going to go up, and it wouldn't take much to push that oil up over $100. It's bouncing around there already, and which means the standard of living goes down. If an individual borrows and they get into debt, but they live high on the hog, and they buy more cars than they need and have a fancy house, and their job is just marginal, but if they lose their job or prices go up, they get wiped out, and they have to, in order to get back on their feet again, they have to work harder and spend less. It's a little different with a country because they have this printing press and they're able to tax people, but there is a limit. But the economic law is the same for the country as it is for the individual. The country eventually has to live beneath its means, and that's what we're witnessing now. And it usually hits some people more than others. So the middle class and the poor get hit the first. They lose their jobs, and they're hurt the most through the inflation. The very wealthy, actually, there's a transfer of wealth. This has been argued by Austrian economists for decades, that when you destroy a currency, it erodes the value of the currency, but the middle class suffer the most, and the wealth is accumulated by the very rich.
And we see that.
We're seeing that, and what does it do? It drives up resentment. And if they don't fully understand this, the middle class who's getting wiped out, they only have anger, and they might strike out at everybody who has wealth rather than the wealth that has been accumulated because of the government programs.
And the social engineers, as you know, Dr. Paul, Congressman, they're fully aware of that, the pressure from above and below. And so right when they got rid of the Glass-Steagall 11 years ago, we start seeing RAND Corporation reports. We start seeing Department of Defense reports saying we've got to basically set up a police state because there's a danger of social unrest coming because of the dwindling middle class. And now we see a British Ministry of Defense report saying the same thing in 2007. And lo and behold, now Homeland Security's putting in 9,000 locations, telescreens saying watch your neighbors. 3 new videos were released yesterday, frightening videos by Homeland Security airing on TV. They're up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com if listeners want to see it or if the congressman hasn't seen it. And it's got people in shopping malls and on the streets, and it shows DHS, TSA on the streets searching people, and it says, we're going to protect you, but we need you to watch your neighbors. I mean, clearly they're trying to bring in an authoritarian system, not for al-Qaeda or these overseas reported threats, but they're now shifting it over to domestic groups, and we saw that attempt to attack conservatives and libertarians and yourself and myself and even Sarah Palin and Rush Limbaugh and talk radio and the First Amendment after the tragic shooting. So can you speak to that, sir, and this conscious movement towards authoritarianism?
Well, there's no doubt about it, and you're absolutely right about the disruption that comes to the communities, because it is there. Most major changes occur, domestically. We take an oath of office to obey the Constitution and defend it against enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, I usually make that point, and even in the very, very patriotic crowds and veterans, which you think would be more hawkish, if you emphasize, the domestic threat, they understand this. So, but I think we're actually winning this argument about this need for militarism around the world to protect ourselves, and that we have to worry about domestically, because people are getting tired of having somebody from the government check every single thing. Back again to China, you can start businesses easier in China than here. So people who have land, people who want to start a business, people who have to pay these high taxes and pay for all these regulations, they're starting to realize this. So I think there's a healthy resistance developing. But like you point out, there is some danger here, and that is, of course, if we get people to understand where the cause comes from, that we might be able to prevent this. See, the one coalition that we should build, we talk a lot about the poor getting poorer and the middle class being wiped out, but the left always thinks, well, the answer to that is just more transfer of wealth. But we have to get them to understand that the reason this happens is because government is too big. Even though they argue for government programs, the government is too big. They argue for these programs, and guess who lost their homes? The rich got richer, and the poor people lost their homes because of this program. But the other big issue is to make sure that people know that corporatism is not free market economics, and that's a misunderstanding.
Well, that was my other point, and I'm glad you got into that, because we're of the same mind because we've studied history, but quantify that for listeners who may be new. The ultra robber baron, non-free market crony capitalist always, as Carol Quigley said at Georgetown, Bill Clinton's mentor, lobby for authoritarianism, whether it's right-wing, left-wing, fascist, socialist, communist, because they create this big pool of collectivized wealth, and they take it offshore. And now the ultra-rich are trying to sell the poor people who are losing their jobs on higher taxes and looting their neighbor who's got more money than them, selling them the lie that that's going to give them a good economy when it's freedom that's going to give them a future.
Yeah, and then they lump everybody together. If you are a businessman, and there are a lot of very decent, wealthy businessmen in this country that earned it and didn't have to live off the government, but they get lumped into that. So when there's unrest, everybody's lumped together, whether they're the people who lived off the government, lived off the taxpayer, or whether they were successful because they delivered good products to consumers at good prices. So there's a big difference there. And, I've had some discussion with Ralph Nader, and I imagine there are a few of your listeners that can't stand Ralph Nader, but I like to talk to him because we do come up with some agreements on this. I mean, he hates this corporatism, and he doesn't like the war and things. So I work with people who can agree with me on some of this. So this is what we have to do is make sure our definitions are clear. Then we have a better chance at solving these problems.
Very well said. Congressman, we're seeing riots all over the world over global inflation driven by the devaluation of the dollar and other fiat currencies. You've been mentioning unrest here, and clearly we're seeing more and more signs of that here. And I remember you back in Austin giving a speech that I attended 7 years ago. We were talking about it during the break when you first got on, and you warned that when the empire starts collapsing, there's two ways to go. It's either recognize that big government breeds corruption and go the opposite direction towards liberty, But that more often than not, instead, the government's going to sell even more of the same as the solution. And so now is the time to get this out to people. I mean, this is a life and death situation for our republic, is it not?
Yes, and it's hard teaching people some of